That means that I am going to visit in person every single training camp in the AFC North. So if you are interested in seeing every little drip of content from that tour and every little drip of content for the preseason and the regular season and hopefully the postseason, then you're going to want to follow me on my social media. On Instagram, that is at worst_take, and on Twitter, that is at Quinn_C. There I will post exclusive content, my raw, unfiltered, unedited opinions after these practices, after these games, or if a piece of news pops up, I'll give my quick thoughts on Instagram and Twitter. Also on Instagram, you're going to want to follow that because I'm also going to be doing live streams during the season. So please, if you're interested in extra content, if you're interested in just following the show outside of YouTube, then follow me on Instagram at worst_take, and then on Twitter at Quincy. And on Twitter, you can almost ask me anything within reason. I'll answer it. And it's also just a great place to be, great place to talk sports. Some of you guys are already on my Twitter having fun. Let's keep joining the party. But without further ado, here's the video. I don't think there's been a Browns training camp in recent memory that's going to be as interesting as this one. And that's not for the usual reasons that people may think. I mean, of course, this team has a lot of expectations, a lot of talent. And finally, for the first time in who knows how long, going into a training camp, they have a #1 quarterback, a bona fide QB1. While that on the surface level is also very interesting, I think what makes this the most interesting Browns training camp since returning in 1999 is the amount of moving parts that this training camp has. I mean, you have a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new special teams coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, and a bunch of new coaches underneath that. You have a bunch of new star level players that are going to be huge pieces of the offense. One who, if you're lucky, is going to come back in week 8. You have a quarterback in his second year. You have a defense that is changing and adding key players, much like the offense. You have a lot of things trying to be put together in a very short amount of time. I mean, the Browns have about a month, really 3 weeks with pads on, to put all of this together for week 1 of the regular season against Tennessee. So given that this team has all of these moving parts together, it might be a little bit hectic to follow this team during training camp because of the amount of coverage and the range of the coverage that there's going to be. But I'm going to give you a guide specifically for the Browns to help you cut through all the things, what to worry about, what not to worry about in this YouTuber's opinion. So follow me along this week on Worst Take as we give a Cleveland Browns training camp guide. Okay, so here are some things that you don't have to worry about that are probably going to be big deals and things that are going to be talked about a lot. The first thing is the QBs and the wide receivers. You're going to hear a lot of probably bad things about the QBs and the wide receivers in the first 2 weeks of camp because it is just an unwritten rule in football that no matter what camp on what level, normally, if there's a new offense and a new defense, the new defense is always going to be ahead. And that is especially the case in the NFL because as defenses have progressed to stop these complex offensive systems, it has required defenses to become almost universal in a way. You have to run multiple fronts. You have to be able to put multiple different types of packages together. You have to be able to have coverage schemes that are both man concepts and zone concepts. Essentially, a lot of these defenses are very interchangeable. Not only does that give the defensive players a little bit of an advantage because they don't have to adjust too much because they're already kind of thrown the entire book when they walk into the NFL, but it also gives the defense an advantage because offenses are going through a complete change in the NFL as far as philosophy goes. Teams are switching up and trying these air raid things in the NFL, which means that now there's a bigger adjustment for offensive players in the NFL as they adjust to learning these new air raid concepts and trying new things out on offense. So that means that the adjustment period is going to be much longer for the offense. So that means that the defense, and this is a very talented defense, is going to look really good probably the first few weeks. The offense is probably not going to look that great. You're probably going to hear some articles about how OBJ isn't really getting open like that, or how Baker Mayfield just is throwing too many interceptions for camp, and all these negative articles about how the Browns got distracted by hype and they're not living up to expectations to the first 2 weeks of camp. Just cut all that noise out. That is a normal thing that a lot of NFL teams are going to go through, because that is just the landscape of the NFL. And that could carry on to the season for the first few weeks. So if this offense starts slow, do not panic. It is something that is just in the nature. You're adding a lot of big pieces. You have a head coach who's not only being a head coach for the first time, but he's doing that and calling plays. You have a new offensive coordinator, a lot of moving pieces, especially on offense. So if the offense takes a little while to get going, maybe through the first 2 weeks of the season even, do not panic. It will come together. There's a lot of talent. Just give it time to grow. The next thing that I would say don't worry about and don't buy into the big headlines you're going to hear is the Freddie Kitchens headlines. People are going to worry about Freddie Kitchens and if he's able to handle the egos on this roster. Does he need to adjust himself to become more of a head coach type figure? And can he keep these guys in line? The problem I have is that a lot of people demand that, Freddie Kitchens turns into the head coach guy. The generic head coach guy, like Hugh Jackson was just a generic head coach guy. There's a million of them in the league. But I think that archetype is kind of, one, dated, and two, a head coach is only as good as a fit as he is for his locker room. Different locker rooms demand a different style of coach. In New England, that works with Bill Belichick because he has crafted the perfect locker room for his style. There's a reason why some people, like Chad Johnson, go to New England. They don't work. Even though they're talented, they just don't fit with the Bill Belichick system. Same thing goes with Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens has a locker room and a quarterback who is in perfect step with him. These guys have been through it with Freddie Kitchens. These guys have seen Freddie Kitchens be the same guy through adversity, through the dysfunction of last year, and come out on the other side of it behind this man a better team. This team believes in Freddie, and this team wants to play for Freddie. So you may hear things, Freddie might say something silly, but don't worry. Freddie Kitchens, I don't think you really got to worry about him all that much. I don't think that's what you have to worry about with this team. Now, here are some things that you're going to want to pay attention to. Now, while Odell and Baker are going to get a ton, and I mean a ton of attention during this training camp, I think you're better served to turn your eyes towards a different combination of players that will be going against each other. And that's Myles Garrett and Greg Robinson. First, Myles Garrett has legit Defensive Player of the Year potential. And that is what gives this Browns team insane potential, because not only do they have multiple people, I mean, Baker Mayfield could win Offensive Player of the Year realistically. Odell Beckham could win Offensive Player of the Year. And then you have a guy on the other side of the ball, and Myles Garrett, who could also realistically win Defensive Player of the Year. That's going to be the barometer for this Browns defense and the decider whether this team's going to be a top 5 defense, which is scary with what they have on offense, or just a regular top 15 defense. Not bad, but not as great as it could be. If Myles Garrett has a Defensive Player of the Year type season, if he can finish within the top 3 of voting, then that means that this defense is probably going to be top 5. And that is a scary combination of things to have what they have on offense with a top 5 defense. The other reason why that show is important is the other side of that ball. Greg Robinson is going to be incredibly important to what this Browns team has to do, because this Browns team legit has no options at backup left tackle. It's Greg Robinson or it's bust. They don't really have a lot of options. Now, that's kind of a scary place to be in, because while Greg Robinson did excellent in the second half of the season, this is a guy who disappointed when he was a Ram, who disappointed when he was in Detroit, and throughout training camp last year, he was a disappointment until the Browns put him in, and then he showed signs of growth. So it's going to be incredibly important to see how Greg Robinson responds. Is he going to be the left tackle that he showed he was? Was his issues in training camp more related to Tyrod Taylor's play style? And that's why he looked so much better when Baker Mayfield was out there? Is Greg Robinson going to be a guy who's going to demand a high price tag at the end of the season because of his play at left tackle? This is the opportunity for Greg Robinson, one, as a person, season just to reset his market and be able to make the money that he probably expected he was going to make as the number 2 pick of the draft. But this is also going to be hugely important to the Browns because Greg Robinson's going to have to hold his own this year if the Browns have any hope of reaching their very high expectations for this season. Browns fans, whether we like it or not, Greg Robinson is it at left tackle. Our hopes at left tackle will live and die with Greg Robinson because Joe Thomas don't look like he's coming out of retirement. So Greg Robinson is going to be really, really important to watch this training camp. This is a crucial year for him. Another position to watch and to worry about a little bit is strong safety. See, when the Browns traded for Odell Beckham, we were celebrating, but we also gave up Jabril Peppers. And while Jabril Peppers is not irreplaceable on this defense, he is somebody that you're going to have to replace. And right now, I really don't know who steps in and takes that role full time. On the Browns roster, you probably have Morgan Burnett, Eric Murray, and Sheldrick Redwine competing for that strong safety spot. And I really don't feel that great about any of them. Eric Murray is just another dude. I have never seen him really do anything in the NFL. Morgan Burnett is a veteran. You have seen him play very well in places like Green Bay, but last year he played for the Steelers, and I didn't even know that. And then Sheldrick Redwine is a rookie, and he's like a 4th round draft pick. Normally those guys don't come in and become instant day 1 starters. So if that happens, that will be a huge surprise. Quite frankly, none of these guys scream starter. So I'm interested to see what the Browns' new defensive coordinator does with this situation, being that he did start in Carolina as a defensive backs coach. So this is kind of his specialty. The Browns have a hole to fill at strong safety, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they fill that hole, and that's going to be a very important thing to watch. So again, while everybody's watching Odell and Baker, keep your eyes on the Myles Garrett and Greg Robinson show and on the back end of that defense at strong safety, because those are the 3 big question marks on this team. Now, the hidden gems, who are going to be the fun guys to watch? The guys you pray don't get cut because you just love watching them during the preseason, or you feel like they just did such a good job that the Browns really need to hold on to these guys. And the first guy I have is Drew Forbes. Drew Forbes is somebody I've heard nothing but good things about since he's entered camp. People have said he is impressed. People said that he could start to push himself into that competition at offensive guard. And if you can get that out of Drew Forbes, that would be excellent. So I think Drew Forbes is somebody who's going to pop off the paper this training camp. The next guy is Damon Shiley Giuseppe, who by far has the best story of the team. This is the guy who talked himself onto the team, acted like he knew one of the Browns front office members, even gave him dap and everything to convince the coaches. But this guy is very interesting, but he's also very athletic. And again, we lost Jabril Peppers. We don't have a punt returner, and this guy can return punts. He's pretty quick. He's pretty explosive. He's going to be fun to watch. So that's going to be a guy I think is going to really pop out during training camp. The next guy, and the guy who's probably going to get the most talk out of everybody on this list because of the Duke Johnson situation, is Dontrell Hilliard. This is a guy who they're really training to catch passes out the backfield, to run routes, pretty much to replace Duke Johnson. Now, in my Duke Johnson video, I got a lot of comments, people saying that you can't trade Duke Johnson because what if something happens to Nick Chubb in the first 8 weeks and Duke Johnson isn't on the team? Who is going to be your starting running back? Are you going to start Dontrell Hilliard? And my answer would be probably yes, or you just wouldn't run the ball as much. And I would also remind people that I think in any situation, if Nick Chubb got hurt, they wouldn't really run the ball that much because this team, this organization, and this coaching staff, well, Freddie Kitchens, has never really ran Duke Johnson that much. And I don't think, and I think even if he was the starter, they would use him as a backup in a 3rd down running back, because in previous situations with previous coaching staffs, even when they were thin at running back, they used Duke Johnson like a backup. That must be for a reason. So that is why I'm not really worried about if Duke Johnson's on this team or not. I don't think his role is going to be that huge because we just don't need him. And I think a guy like Dontrell Hilliard could probably fill that role pretty well. And with the threats that this team has passing the ball, there's no way somebody is going to stack the box against the Browns. So you're not really going to need Pro Bowl talent at running back. I mean, look at the number of teams that have great passing threats that have been able to skate by with some pretty sketchy running backs. So that is why Dontrell Hilliard is going to get a lot of looks. I think Dontrell Hilliard is actually a pretty good running back in this league and a solid backup running back in this league. And I think he's going to prove that throughout the first few weeks of camp. And I think he's a guy, if Duke Johnson does decide to hold out to get his trade request, impress. I think he's a guy who's going to make Browns fans forget about Duke Johnson because I think he's going to be that impressive during camp. Now let's get to the disappointments. Guys I don't think are going to live up to the billing, guys who I think are ultimately going to let fans down. And the first guy is Austin Corbett. The fact that I have heard about every single offensive guard on this team in a positive light, except for Austin Corbett, throughout this entire offseason is extremely alarming. The fact that he has not been awarded the starting offensive guard spot, and with all due respect to his competition, who's Eric Kush, who's a veteran offensive guard who has bounced around the league a lot and is a solid player, Austin Corbett was the #1 pick of the second round. He should be penciled in as the starter. The Browns should feel really confident in that. And the fact that they don't really feel that confident says a lot about what the Browns coaching staff thinks they're seeing out of Austin Corbett. And I think that's very alarming. We're hearing about Drew Forbes. We're hearing about Eric Kush. We're not hearing about Austin Corbett. I think he's setting us up for a pretty big letdown, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's not the day one starter at right guard. The next guy is Seth DeValve, and man, Seth DeValve is somebody I have been rooting for. I have been wanting to see because I believe that he has great talent, he has great physicality, and he seems like an all-around good guy. Guy went to Princeton, and what he's been able to do when he's healthy and getting consistent playing time on the field has been pretty good as a Brown, but that's the thing, he is never healthy. Last year, he missed almost the entire camp, and he still found a way to be on the roster. This year, he better be healthy, and not just healthy, but impressive to stay on this roster, because I think there are other guys on this roster that can push for playing time, that can push for his roster spot, and Seth DeValve's roster spot is in limbo. The next guy that I think could set us up for a disappointment, and I don't want this to be true, I really would love for this player to set training camp on fire. And the next guy, because this is a guy that, you know, I have loved watching for about 4 or 5 years as a Browns fan. He's probably been one of the more consistent things throughout the doo-doo that they put on the field, but that is Christian Kirksey. He's coming off of injury. He's walking into a Steve Wilkes defensive system that does not really fit him that well. Christian Kirksey is not, he's more of a all-around guy. He's more of a guy you can keep on the field at all times, who's not great at anything, but he's really good at a lot of things. And this defense might require him to be much better at coverage than he is. Keep that into the fact that he's getting older and he's one of the more paid guys, and that the Browns drafted 2 guys who play his position that are more athletic and whose skill set matches this defense more. And it makes me worry about where Christian Kirksey's place is going to be on this defense. With this defense, it wouldn't surprise me if they went sometimes with 2 linebackers. And I don't see with 2 linebackers if you're going to be able to have Kirksey as the other linebacker if Joe Schobert's out there. I just see more question marks for Christian Kirksey's potential in this defense than I see positives for him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is not somebody that we're raving about at the end of camp. Now, I hope I'm wrong on that. I would love more. I would love nothing more for Christian Kirksey to continue to be on this team for years down the line. He has earned to see this team get some success because he's been through the worst years. But my honest opinion, I don't know if he fits this defense. I don't know if he has a future on this team because of his contract and because he's just not a fit, and the Browns have replacements who might be better fits behind him in rookies that they've drafted. But that is it, guys. That is what to look for and what to guide your attention at when the Browns training camp starts. These are the things that are going to determine what happens on the field and how this team starts out, and what's going to really be important, again, in my opinion. Now, I want to know your opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think are the most important things to watch for this training camp, what you're personally looking at as a fan for your team's training camp. I would love to hear your answers down below. And also, patrons, huge announcement for you guys. There will be a Patreon exclusive fantasy football league. I'm not sure of the details yet. I have to see how many of you guys are interested and how many people are interested in becoming patrons to do fantasy football. But if you are, join the Patreon, give $1 or $2 a month or so, and then just message me that you're interested in the fantasy football league. Spots might be limited, so if you are interested, please let me know as soon as possible. But again, Patreon exclusive fantasy football. If you want to play fantasy football with Worst Take fans and myself included, if you're already a Patreon member, just message me on Patreon. Let me know you're interested in the league. I'll write your name down, and I'll make sure I send you an invite. And if you are somebody who is new, who's joining, just join the Patreon and just send me a message. Let me know you're interested in the league. And again, same deal. I'll write your name down and put you down. And if you do that before August 10th, you will be in the league. If you do that after August 10th, you will not, because that is the deadline, I hope, where I have enough people to just finally start the league, set the draft rules up, and start the voting on certain rules for the league within the Patreon itself. Again, join the Patreon if you want to play fantasy football with me and fellow worst takers who are also Patreon. And if you are already a Patreon member, free bonus perk, sign up for the league, send me a message, and I will put your name down so we can start this league. I'm very excited to do this. And disclaimer, I am absolute trash at fantasy football, so don't make fun of me. But again, just wanted to get that announcement out the way. And if you really like this video, if you really like what I do, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding the notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And I upload a bunch, and I'm going to be uploading a bunch during this month to cover so much training camp, guys. It's going to be incredible. You guys are going to love it. But again, guys, that's going to be it for this week's video. Thank you for watching. Have a good day and have a great night.